Союз нерушимый республик свободный. Sorry, Russian speakers, I'm sorry about what I just did to you there. But I would rather try and suck than just be the American who's like, languages? There are other languages in the world? Hello, friends. This is Type 56, the story of the SKS and AK-47 in China. I'm Jason Clower. This is a course about why the PLA deliberately chose obsolescent weapons. I'm coming to you again today from the field. At the Type 56 Ordnance Department, the headquarters company is on the march. Therefore, it's especially apropos that I talk to you today about singing. I must give you a trigger warning. Today, during this video, I will sing. If you have heart problems, or if you are prone to depression or react strongly to harsh auditory stimuli, please reconsider going on. We've begun to talk in this course about the qualities of the PLA soldiers that were counted on by the PLA leadership in their calculation that a simple weapon like the SKS could work for them. Because really, they planned to rely more on the man and his ethos than on the armament. Last time we were talking about the quality of persistence. Today we're talking about a somewhat elusive quality that I'm going to call voluntarism. As a simple first pass at what that means, it's that from the beginning, in the origins of the PLA, in what we might call its golden age or its genesis, when it first took on the abidingly unique characteristics that made it distinct from, the emphasis was always on volunteering for personal sacrifice. This was not a choice that was going to get you far in life. Back during the Chinese Civil Wars, when China was an incredibly violent place, if you took the radical step of joining the Communist Party and or its armed wing, the probability was very high that you would meet a violent end and possibly in terrific agony. And let me clarify that in those days, to be a communist was not a sort of statement of your outlook. It wasn't like being a communist meant that you sat in a coffee shop and you annoyed people by saying like, oh my God, I am like literally a communist. No, joining the Communist Party meant that you took on party discipline. It's not like you were doing this for GI Bill benefits. It might be because you had been captured and offered a chance to turn coat. The PLA was very, very generous with political prisoners and defectors, and that was one of its many recruiting secrets. But you were probably going to die a horrible death with nothing that we would recognize as sufficient medical care. And it wasn't because your comrades in the party didn't care about you, it was just that the mission came first. So it's one thing for me to sort of say that to you in the abstract. It'll probably go in one ear, out the other. It's much more effective for me to tell you stories. And because we're human beings, we're primates and we're wired for sound and story and music, I'm actually going to take the radical step of singing. One thing is, human beings are amazing. We've evolved to tell stories and very often to sing them. Different militaries and different institutions have different strategies for indoctrinating people. I use that in the neutral sense of sort of taking a person and changing him or her from an atomic individual into someone who identifies with the group and its mission. Different organizations have different ways of doing that. Many of them use song. Many militaries do. The French military comes to mind as an outstanding example. And also, even civilian organizations like Japanese corporations and universities. And so, long story short, a shortcut, a kind of skeleton key toward quickly understanding an institution and its culture is to know its stories and its songs. We're going to focus today on a Chinese revolutionary song that's become the Chinese national anthem, called the March of the Volunteer. It actually started, I'm told, as part of a movie soundtrack in a Shanghai movie during the Civil War. And the Shanghai movie industry was very dominated by communist sympathizers. This revolutionary song was such a hit, so I'm told, that it ended up becoming so popular that it was adopted as China's national anthem. Like, that's the kind of thing you expect to happen in America, where a movie anthem becomes the national anthem. In any case, we're going to look at that today. Let me start by saying that, in my humble opinion, you can tell an awful lot about a culture by its national anthem. Or I should say, you can tell an awful lot about a state or a regime by its national anthem. That tells you much of what you need to know about its ideals, how it sees itself, what it wants to be. And in my mind, in sort of my uninformed personal typology, in a unrigorous, unacademic way, I kind of think that there's a spectrum of national anthems. At one end, you've got like the very bloodless, ideific sort of national anthem, where, yeah, there might be patriotic sentiment, but it's very much at the level of ideals. Let's see, one that comes to mind is the old Soviet national anthem, or the Russian national anthem now, which is a readaptation of it. Those are anthems of ideas. Союзные Руси, Республик Свободный. Sorry, Russian speakers, I'm sorry about what I just did to you there. But I would rather try and suck than just be the American who's like, languages? There are other languages in the world? All right, Союзные Руси, Республик Свободный. The indivisible union of free republics, ha 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 ha, in its Russian Federation form. There's a really good hard rock version of this. Россия священная, наша держава, Россия любимая, наша страна. Sorry, I just can't stop. Something, something, something. Славься, Отечество наше свободное, братских народов союз ветовой. I'm getting looks. Могучая воля великая. I only half understand what I just said there. It's not that I really understand Russian. Russia, something, something, like something really good. Россия. Любимая наша страна, Russia, our beloved homeland, or something, великая слава, something glorious, grand and glorious, something, братских народов союз ветовой, a something union of fraternal peoples. You get the idea. They're really proud. Мы гордимся тобой. I think that means we are proud of you. So it's not a fighting song, although that hard rock version really makes me want to rock. It's not a fighting song. It's a song of pride. It's a song of, at least about their ideals, a union of free republics. And if memory serves, I think you could say something similar about the Republic of China anthem, at least as I remember it. It's very much a product of the 1920s, sort of an aspirational song about nation building, and in a fashion that's very typical of Chinese culture. It looks to ideas, expecting that you set the right ideas and the right cultural ideals, and then the behaviors and the results will follow from those. Speaking of voluntarism, roughly speaking, very roughly speaking, in Chinese civilization, and certainly in Maoist thought, culture is upstream of what Marx would call infrastructure. Ideas, ideals, and culture are a watershed factor in determining social reality. I know that when you go to a Chinese college and you take the awful class on 马列哲学, Marxist-Leninist philosophy and dialectical materialism. That is not what they say. I know that. I've been to those classes. They shortened my life. But I'm talking about the actual attitudes, not the crap that's written in the government textbook. You got me? Maoism is voluntarism. Marxism is materialist determinism. Maoism flips that on its head. So that's the sort of like idea end of the spectrum, kind of the Platonic type of national anthem. At the other end of the spectrum, I would put the French anthem, the Marseillaise. That thing is a blood-spattered war song. It's got bayonets and throat wounds. Hum a few bars that you know from the beginning of the French anthem. De la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé, contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant est lavé, l'étendard sanglant est lavé. Then in the middle, it takes on this minor key. I guess that's what that is. I'm not a musicologist. I don't understand. Oui, sur ces féroces soldats, ils viennent jusque dans nos bras, égorger nos fils et nos compagnes. Something like the ferocious soldiers, they approach us, and something like we're gonna embrace them in our arms as if they were brothers, but instead they gorge our sons and comrades. They throat them out. I think that's a reference to like bayonets in the throat. Anyway, it's not good. It's a bloodbath of an anthem. I still remember learning this thing in 6th grade French class, and honestly being just a little bit scarred by it. So France is the other end of the spectrum. The Chinese national anthem, the March of the Volunteer, is a little closer to the French side, with important differences. The emphasis there is on defiance and willingness to sacrifice, not death-seeking nihilism. That would be the French Foreign Legion, I would say. But purpose, high purpose, and a perfect willingness to sacrifice your individuality and your individual life in the service of that purpose. And as I said, one way of exemplifying the fact that people in these early days of the Chinese Communist armed movement who joined up with those forces were willing to give up their bodies and lives to really gruesome ends is that we can see it in the song. 起来，不愿做奴隶的人们，把我们的血肉筑成新的长城。Arise, ye people who will not be slaves. Let us build our flesh and blood into a new Great Wall of China. They're not just going to fight, they're going to offer their own body tissues as sandbags if that's what it takes. Now, I want to hasten to point out that this is not a kind of despondency. This isn't a death cult. No, gosh, there is no minor key in that song. It's not like the cherry blossoms are falling and we're going to charge to certain death. No. I hesitate to call this optimistic, but it is purposeful and upbeat. Now, part of that is for purposes of building morale, but it's because even among organizations whose members are fully prepared to die, like for reals, even there is a difference of sentiments. Look at the French Foreign Legion. Now, again, I'm talking through my Ushanka here, but because I've not served in the French Foreign Legion, but I know a lot of French marching songs because my infant son, when he was born, he would not stop crying unless I sang him French Foreign Legion songs. This is for real.
Pour les Alsaciens, les Suisses et les Lorrains. Pour les Belges, il n'y en a plus. Pour les Belges, il n'y en a plus. Ce sont des tireurs au cul. Pour les Belges, il n'y en a plus. Pour les Belges, il n'y en a plus. Ce sont des tireurs au cul.
When you study kind of the self-mythos of the French Foreign Legion, there is a definite fatalism. Not just a willingness to risk death, but a kind of sense that we're already dead men, and we are marching with grim resignation into the arms of the devil. In fact, one of the songs that my son loved the most has them saying,
Nous n'avons pas seulement des armes, mais le diable marche avec nous. Ah, 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 ah.
That is, we don't just have weapons, but the devil marches with us. There's this ethos there that we have nothing to fight for but each other. We have no other home. Legio Patria Nostra. The Legion is our country. There's a distinct, Sartrean existentialist lack of ideal and purpose there. We just fight because it is absurd, and we will die, and whatever, c'est la vie, or c'est la mort. And there's a lot of frank acknowledgement of death in those Foreign Legion songs, not in a tone of hopefulness, not with a sense of mission that's enunciated in the song, but just sort of resignation. Au cours de nos campagnes lointaines, affrontons la fièvre et le feu, oublions avec nos peines la mort qui nous oublie si peu. Over the course of our long campaigns, let us forget as we confront fire and fever, since they spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, a climate that was unhealthy for their mostly European and North African constitutions. Let us forget, along with all of our... Sorry, I had to relocate the field headquarters to avoid enemy air observers. Let us forget, along with our pain, that very death which so seldom forgets us. This is not an upbeat song. Now, it's not that the Chinese March of the Volunteers is upbeat exactly, but musically there's no, dark air of regret in it. I know I'm, getting hand-wavingly interpretive here, but there's no hint that we're doing this out of a sense of despondence, despair, hopelessness, but it is very disregarding and self-abnegating about our own individual bodies. As I was saying at the beginning, the first couple lines involve us using our flesh and blood to make a new Great Wall of China, which is to say, basically, let's use our bodies as sandbags, since it's all we've got. I love how, in contrast, the American national anthem, it starts with sort of some gestures toward natural beauty and love of country, and then very quickly we get modern engineering, fortifications, and state-of-the-art air-burst artillery and rocket artillery. That is the most American thing ever. In the Chinese case, using your own body as sandbags because that might be all you've got, that is the most PLA thing ever, the most voluntarist thing ever. They're really ride or die about this, and everything is about the cause. I don't want to paint this too strongly, too much into the myth of the Asian collectivist who's almost like an ant in his lack of individuality. No, but there's some serious grains of truth there. The song ends, 我们万众一心，冒着敌人的炮火前进，冒着敌人的炮火前进，前进，前进，进。With our 10,000 hearts united as one, we brave the enemy shell fire, marching forward, forward, ever forward. For the moment in this course, my working English term for that kind of high, huge morale and will toward self-abnegation in the service of this great, positive, collective, almost soteriological end. My word for that is going to be voluntarism. So that is today's first pass, a kind of dialectical pass, if you will, at looking at another of the great defining PLA qualities of voluntarism. It's not just about morale, it's not just about ideology, it's not just about collectivism, it's about will. And pretty soon, this is going to help us understand more about what underlay that famous Maoist PLA doctrine that the arms were less important than the ethos. Now we're going to see this could get carried to some absurd lengths, in particular by Chairman Mao himself. But this was a classic example of making a virtue of necessity. That is, if you don't have much in the way of arms, you better make your ethos go as far as it can. But also, this has deep, deep roots in Chinese civilization, going back at least to the Song dynasty. And a lot of people will say that I'm being anachronistic here, but really farther, to Confucius's time, to before Confucius's time, to the 5 classics. That's a different course, but if I really had to, I would go to the mat on that one. For today, this has been Type 56, the story of the SKS and AK-47 in China. If you like this sort of content, and if your eardrums are still intact, please like and subscribe. We have much more to come.
Fidélité est notre loi, luttons pour notre foi. Notre fierté de chevalier, notre honneur de soldat. Nous sommes les hommes des troupes d'assaut, soldats de la vieille légion. En tes mains brandissons nos drapeaux. En vainqueur nous défilerons. Nous n'avons pas seulement des armes, mais le diable marche avec nous. Ah, 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 car nos aînés de la Légion se battent là-bas, nous emboîtons le pas.